People requested it. I wanted to just say no. If you miss it, you miss it. But we'll see how it goes. All right. So we haven't done one of these in a while. Thank you for coming. Everyone that came, brought a buddy in, and stayed. Thank you for staying. But thank you for bringing people in, kind of showing your gym family and the kind of workouts that we do and stuff like that. Hopefully they had a good time. As far as nutrition goes, we are going to get a little bit deep into a couple things, but we're not going to hang out there very much. So if you have questions, put those down, and we can answer those later, either afterwards, or we can answer those one-on-one with myself, Stephanie, Trevor, and then we have Delana up here, who's a local nutritionist that was kind enough to come in. She was interested to see what we were going to be talking about today and stuff like that. So she does individual nutritional guidance, plans, things like that, and coaching, all right? And a lot of the stuff, I think we're on the same page. A lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today is probably the stuff that she's going to talk to you about if you decide to use her services or anything like that. So in our nutrition, I know a lot of you might be confused on what to eat, what not to eat, how many calories to take in, how much protein is too much, how much protein is not enough, what's the minimum amount of protein I need to build muscle, like all of those things, and it is very individualized, all right? One of the first questions that we had on there, and it took me longer to construct the presentation than it did to actually put the information in there, just on what made sense and kind of how it flows. And one of the best places to start was, what is nutrition? All right? Not gonna spend a lot of time here because it's not that difficult of a definition. All right? Simply put, it's the process of consuming, absorbing, and using nutrients needed to fuel, grow, develop, and maintain life. That's it. All right? Now, what you decide to put in your body as far as nutrition has a lot to do with all of those things. How you fuel yourself, how you develop yourself, how you feel, things like that, right? So again, not that difficult in definition. Implementation, a little bit more difficult. A lot of choices out there, right? With that being said, whatever plan or path you go down in nutrition, the one thing I would say to start off is, if you talk to Delana, if you talk to me, if you're working with a remote online coach, anything like that, once you decide that you're going to use that person, stop looking elsewhere. Right? You don't want to be consumed with all of the noise on the outside. You want to focus on what the task is at hand and the plan that's being put together for you specifically. All right? That's one of the biggest things that I see that people struggle with is they get information from someone, they start doing a plan, 2 to 3 weeks in, it might not be working. You're just on the cusp of actually getting some results. When you start looking for other places to go, stick with that plan longer than 2 or 3 weeks, because it's going to take routine, consistency, and stuff like that. Once you get there, you got another 2 to 3 weeks before you start seeing those results. So make sure that whoever you use or whatever plan you start following, that you stick with it for more than 2 to 3 weeks, give it its due time. I have a few people in here that when they started working with me about a month to a month and a half in, they're like, I'm not sure about this, right? And I'll use Emily. Emily, I was like, what'd I say? I was like, give it a couple more weeks. And then a couple more weeks later, she goes, okay, I'm sold, right? So, but you have to buy into it, right? This is one of the things I debated on whether or not to talk about, is your metabolism. There were a couple questions about metabolism and slow metabolism, fast metabolism, what is metabolism? Should I eat to start my metabolism? Okay, we're gonna start there. Your metabolism never stops. Okay, it's something that happens it's a chemical process that happens naturally, just like your heart beating, right? That's a physical, but it happens just automatically, all right? And your body, this process, your body converts foods, drinks into energy. It's a very complex mechanism, but that's very simply put how it works, okay? A lot of things affect your metabolism. We're gonna talk about what does it do, all right? Again, it's constant, all right? It never stops. It provides energy for basic functions of the body. These are the types of things: breathing, circulating blood, digesting food, growing, repairing cells, managing hormone levels, regulating body temperature, things that you don't need to worry about because it automatically does it. Your body wants to be in homeostasis as much as possible, which is why nutrition and sleep and things like that are so important, okay? How does it affect weight? All right. So, hopefully you guys can read these, but I'm going to try to briefly go over them so you can kind of hear it out loud. And it naturally regulates itself to meet your body's needs. So it's trying to find that homeostasis. It's always working, right? It's rarely the cause of weight gain or weight loss. People think because they have a slow metabolism or a fast metabolism, that's the reason they're losing weight, that's the reason they're gaining weight, that's the reason they can't lose weight, whatever it is, but it is rarely the issue. And we'll talk about some of the issues that could be causing it, that do affect it here in just a second. In general, anyone who burns more calories than they take in will lose weight, with a caveat, right? And we'll get to that. Fat versus slow metabolism, okay? Very simply, a fast metabolism burns more calories, a slow metabolism burns less calories, which means someone with a high metabolism needs to eat more, someone with a slow metabolism needs to eat less, okay? Yeah, that's it. Any questions on that? That's pretty simple. Metabolic disorders that can affect weight loss, all right? So these are where your body, it affects how your body processes nutrients and enzymes in your body, okay? These disorders, you might inherit them from your parents. Thanks, mom and dad, right? And then how much you eat and exercise isn't a factor. There's nothing you can do, right? So what are some of those things? I'm not gonna go through what these are because they can get very in-depth. These are all, metabolic disorders. If you have one of these, my recommendation is, this is way over my pay grade, my expertise, you need to reach out to a registered dietitian and or your doctor, get testing done, get blood work done, saliva testing, hair samples, things like that. If you have any of these or any of these have been in your family, then you need to contact your doctor just so you know what you have in store for you, okay? What can affect my metabolism, right? So endocrine disorders, such as hypothyroidism or Cushing's syndrome, right? Not gonna go deep into what those are. But if you've been to the doctor and they say you have thyroid issue and they've done blood work and you're hyper or hypo, right? That can affect. Hypo affects weight gain, right? Your metabolism can also cause other systemic health problems, all right? What does that mean? Anyone who takes in more calories than they burn will gain weight. It's a fact, all right? This can lead to obesity, other related problems like diabetes and metabolic syndrome. Other factors that affect your metabolism: muscle mass. All right? Very simply, if you're a client of mine or of ours here at the gym, you'll hear us say this a lot. You need protein to build muscle so that over time you can speed up your metabolism so that you can get to where you want to be. Right? That's how we put it. This is a little bit more in depth, and I'll read it out in case you can't read it. It takes more energy, calories, to build and maintain muscle than fat. More muscle mass often equals faster metabolism. Not always, often. There are things that limit that. We just talked about those. Could be in things you inherited, or hypothyroidism, things like that, right? For faster metabolism, which will burn more calories. In turn, you should reduce fat, right? Your age. This one is kind of controversial. Kind of goes up and down, right? For a long time, people are like, oh, your metabolism just automatically drops when you get older at a certain age, this and that, blah, 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 whatever. Science shows that is not necessarily the case. What happens when you retire and get older is you become less active and you stop lifting, and you stop strength training. That affects your metabolism, which affects how much muscle you have on your body, which affects the frailty of your body, which affects everything else. Okay? So, hopefully that makes sense, because that's very important. Because we have people in our 50s, 60s, pushing 70s into our 70s at this gym, right? Or as individual design clients or personal training clients, right? And you may have friends that are older than you that are talking about these things. Oh, I don't have as much energy as I used to have because I'm getting older. No, that's not the case. There's people in this room right here that have more energy now than they've ever had in their life, and they're in their 50s and 60s. So we can prove that wrong, right? Sex. This is true, mostly, right? It does vary based on your activity and what your workout style and routine is, lifestyle routine. But males tend to have higher metabolisms because they have more lean body mass, and in turn, they usually have less body fat mass, or percent body fat, right? We have more muscle mass, larger bones, less body fat, just genetically speaking, right? Genes. The genes you inherit from your parents play a role in your muscle size and ability to build that muscle mass. Doesn't mean you're stuck with it. It just means it plays a role, right? You see all the time, if you ever watch or followed bodybuilding or CrossFit or anything like that, and you see these little bitty guys when they first start out, and then I'm talking about the people without enhancement, okay? But 2, 3, 4, 10 years later, they look like a completely different person, right? So genetically, they were at a certain spot, but with hard work, effort, proper nutrition, rest, supplementation possibly, right? You can gradually build onto that frame, right? Physical activity, what we preach all the time, right? Walking, chasing your kids around, playing tennis, other forms of exercise, cause your body to burn more calories than being sedentary, which means you need to eat more. It doesn't mean you just stay in that deficit. The longer you're in that deficit, you get adverse effects. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. There's a lot of information, and again, that's why I said if you want to grab pen and paper and then write something down, take a note, write a question down that you might have at the end, it's going to be a lot of information. So now, after we get kind of out of the weeds of the metabolism part and understanding what some of the things that might be affecting your strength gains, muscle gains, weight loss, lack of weight loss, lack of sleep, things like that, one of the other big questions was, what are macros? The macronutrients, right? Those are the basic building blocks of your nutrition. Carbohydrates, proteins, fats, okay? What's the function of a carbohydrate? I wasn't going to talk about this, but then I started thinking about it. I was like, it might be important to know because carbohydrates have a kind of negative connotation, right? Especially with keto out there, low carb diets and things like that. People are like, oh, I don't want to eat carbs because it's going to make me fat. No, excess calories make you fat. Carbs don't make you fat, right? You need carbohydrates for energy. You need carbohydrates to keep water in the muscle so that you can have good protein synthesis when you throughout the process, okay? So carbohydrates, energy production is number one thing it does. Provides energy to the body, right? Energy storage. It's very dependent on your activity. If you're more active, it uses that energy. If you're less active, it stores it. Guess says what? Fat, right? So, and this is the point where I'm like, that doesn't mean eat pizza and then get active all of a sudden, right? Because you're not gonna burn off your pizza, and you're not gonna burn off a box of Little Debbie cakes, you're not gonna burn off a dozen of Krispy Kreme donuts in one day. You can work all day long, and you're still not gonna burn it off, all right? Moderation. So I'll never tell you can't eat anything. I'm not gonna say you can't have donuts. I'm not gonna say you can't have this or that. But we'll talk about how to build that throughout your program or decision making as we go. Okay? Building macromolecules. Building macromolecules. There you go. No, you're good. So this is kind of like the nerd part of it, this stuff, right? Building macromolecules. I didn't put it in there just to kind of sound smart because it's beyond me. That's why I have this big long definition up there, because I cannot remember all that, right? But it is important. It's important for protection against oxidative stress on the body, all right? It's used in many other chemical reactions in the body. If all the energy, glycogen storing capacity, and building needs of the body are met, excess glucose can be used to make fat. Meaning if you're not active, you'll store it, okay? This is why a diet too high in carbohydrates and calories can add to the fat pounds, or weight gain, or whatever, or bloating, or whatever you want to call it, right? And then it actually spares protein. That's why carbohydrates should be a part of what you eat. Very low carbohydrate diets actually blunts the process of building muscle. There's a balance, all right? So a lot of times, and you'll see it when we break everything down, I like starting people at 40% carbohydrates, 30% fats, 30% proteins. We do that for a month or so. And if our energy's not there and we're not sleeping well, we might increase those carbohydrates. If everything's looking good, but we're not building the muscle, then we may take a little fat out, add protein. We kind of balance it out based on the numbers that we see on our in-body scans and how you're feeling, right? So being in tune with your body is the number one thing you need. Mentally be aware of how you feel after you eat, when you wake up in the morning, things like that, right? And then what's the function of fats? They provide energy. You need fats. There are essential fats that you need in your diet so that you have proper energy and proper balance, okay? It absorbs certain nutrients, vitamins A, D, E, and K. Those are very important nutrients for your body to have so you perform optimally. Whether it's a sport, whether it's in life, whether it's being mentally acute, getting to work and being sharp at your job, right? Eye health, bone health and calcium absorption, vitamin E, neutralizing free radicals, vitamin K, blood clot, helps in blood clotting, right? So, again, very important, all right? Maintains core body temperature, all right? That's your body in that homeostasis, right? Too low a body fat percentage can be unhealthy. Your body has to work a lot harder to keep that core body temperature where it wants to be. Too much, it doesn't have to work enough, right? Good fats, bad fats. I'm not going to go into that. Good fats, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated fats, those come from cold water fishes like salmon and tuna, vegetable oils, nuts, avocados, seeds, things like that, right? Those are your good fats. Bad fats, fried foods, low density. They have low density. They cause LDL issues, raise blood pressure over time, increase the risk of heart attacks and strokes, which is very prevalent right now. Mild heart attacks, mild strokes, it's very prevalent, way more than it's ever been, right? And then, what's the function of proteins? Well, proteins are the building blocks of life. That's it. Every cell in your body has protein in it. Every cell. That's why it's so important to eat enough protein, because every cell in your body needs it. Every cell in your body doesn't need fats. Every cell in your body doesn't need carbohydrates. Every cell in your body needs protein though, all right? Reduces hunger and cravings. We're gonna get more into that when we get through stuff, but the more protein you eat, keeps you satiated, right? You eat 4 to 6 ounces of protein, then you eat some vegetables, you're probably gonna be full. You'll under-eat calories if that's the approach you take, right? If you eat rice and beans and some plantains and then try to follow it up with protein, you're not gonna get all your protein in because you're gonna be stuffed from all those carbohydrates, right? And then proteins are made up of amino acids, not branched chain amino acids. Amino acids, essential amino acids. Your body needs them. It doesn't produce them. You have to give it to them. Okay? That's the other reason why it's so important to get your protein consumption in. Your body needs it. Right? You're not going to produce it. The more you deprive it of protein, it's going to pare your muscle down over and over and over again until you get weak and feeble, and then you'll go into your osteoporosis and everything like that, and it'll just keep tapping into it until you feed it. Right? So you want to make as we get older, and our ladies know this because their doctors will tell them if there's signs of osteopenia or you have osteoporosis or diagnosed with osteoporosis, what are they gonna say? You need to do resistance training, right? Any kind of resistance training. That is with weights and full body. Running helps a little bit, but it only helps the lower half of the body. If the upper body's not doing anything, it's gonna be weak, okay? It doesn't send a response into that much. And then we're gonna start to go a little bit faster through here real quick. What are calories? It's a unit that is measured in energy. Calories give you energy. We're gonna get into our basal metabolic rate and how many calories each individual person needs. And your basal metabolic rate, before we get into it, is your bare minimum number of calories that you need to function normally on a day-to-day basis. If you do nothing and your basal metabolic rate is 1,500, you need to eat 1,500 calories. If you're laying in bed all day, you need to eat 1,500 calories still. And if you don't eat 1,500 calories and you're active, you're working against your body, okay? How do I know how many calories to eat? This was one of the number one questions, right? And it still is the number one question for everyone we talk to, even people that we've already worked with. Not picking, I'm just pointing out facts. Oh, hold on. There we go. All right, so it's not that simple. It is simple, but it's not that simple, okay? It's very individualized, which is why it can be confusing to people, especially if you're online and you're looking at a bunch of different places, right? The simple way, if you don't want to get on an InBody or you don't have access to it, is to simply take your body weight, multiply it by 10, all right? 150 pounds, 1,500 calories. Then you want to take that number and multiply it by 20% or 0.2. That's gonna give you add those two together, that's gonna give you your daily activity burn. Again, it's very estimated, all right? Because if someone weighs 250 pounds and they have a low BMR, they're gonna be overeating, right? So that's why it's important to get with a dietitian or a nutritionist or do an InBody scan or do it at your doctor or something like that. So you have a very, not exact, because it's never exact, because it changes from day to day and it changes throughout the day, right? But you'll get something close to where you can dial into what your basic BMR is, your basal metabolic rate or resting metabolic rate. That equals your, okay, so the best way is what I just said, right? Is coming in, and anyone who hasn't done an InBody scan, if you're here right now and you're not a part of the gym, you can come back and we'll kind of give you guidelines and do a free InBody. And you need to be fasted for 2 to 3 hours. and you need to not have had any water or liquid for 30 to 45 minutes. And it's not perfect, but if you do it at the same time every day and it's very similar, apples to apples comparisons, then it's going to give you a good guideline. Okay. So why is that? So what is everything that machine does over there? It breaks it down into exacts. All right. Instead of estimating, it's going to be very close to exactly what you need to, where you need to start. So your BMR is your basal metabolic rate or your resting metabolic rate. Okay. That's that minimum amount of calories that you need on a daily basis just to function. Right? TEF or TEE, depending on where you're coming from or what you've studied from, is thermoeffective feeding or thermoeffective eating. They're the same thing. Feeding, eating, same thing. Right? And I'm going to show you how we calculate that in a second. Non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, is your NEAT. And a lot of people think they can increase their NEAT by just going for long walks and stuff like that. It's not necessarily true. It's great to use that as kind of like as 10,000 steps increases my NEAT. It doesn't. Your NEAT is kind of like if you have high energy, then your NEAT's going to be higher. If you're fidgety, anxious, your NEAT's going to be higher. If you're pretty laid back and chill and nothing really bothers you, and you're not fidgety and you find yourself getting comfortable really easily, your non-exercise activity is going to be lower. Yes, technically, because what I was going to say is that's internal. Your non-exercise activity is an internal thing, right? Walking is technically an exercise. It's putting additional stress on the body. It's very light, sustainable stress, but it's still stress on the body, right? So it's still considered an exercise. Yes, technically you can increase your NEAT by that, but that's not what they mean by non-exercise activity. Just want to clear that up. And then we have EEE, which is your exercise energy expenditure. When you go work out, when you go for long walks, if you go for a jog, anything that's strenuous. I'll use Erin for an example. She's a PE teacher. Her entire day is physically strenuous. She can burn 7,000 calories in a day? Or that, or, no. What was it? 3,000. 3,000 calories, sorry.
That's the most.
Yeah, that's the most in one day. Right, but on average, it's probably 1,500 to 2,000 calories before she even comes in here to work out. Right? That's a lot of activity. That's not NEAT, that's work. That's stress, right? And then you have your TDEE, which is your total daily energy expenditure. Okay, that's all that stuff up added together. All right, this is where the paper and stuff like that might come in. It helps if you write it down to understand it. That's why I was saying that we have that stuff over there. So your TDEE is BMR, TEF, NEAT, and EEE, all the things that we just went over what they are, all of those added together, right? And I just use this as an example because I already said 150-pound person, right? So if their BMR is 1,500, then the thermoeffective feeding, we're going to take that 1,500 and multiply it by 10, just like we did with your body weight. But now we know exactly what your BMR is, right? And that equals 150. We're going to add that to it. And it's going to make it 1,600 or 1,650. So 1,500 plus 150 is 1,650, right? Your non-exercise activity. If you have a sedentary person that doesn't do much, they don't do anything at work, they come home, they sit down, then a sedentary person is going to be somewhere. I went on the higher side here because I don't think most of our people just sit down all day, right? But even as someone who works in an office, but is kind of like does laundry and stuff like that and does normal activities, it's going to be somewhere around 150 to 250 for their NEAT. If you have someone who's very active, like Erin, or someone who delivers packages, or a mailman, or something like that, that's walking 10, 15, 17,000 steps a day, then they're going to need anywhere from 350 to 500. Okay? And we call it NEAT, but it's additional work. Okay? and then your exercise expenditure for a beginner is usually, because a beginner can't go necessarily harder than someone who's experienced, so they're not going to burn as many calories in general. So we have 250 and 500 for beginner and advanced. Now, if you have a wearable that's way more accurate, you could come in here and you could be like, man, I must have burned 750 calories today. And you look at it, you burn 400, right? That happens a lot. One, it's not, those are, 75% maybe accurate? But it lets you know that you can't just work hard all the time to burn off those calories because it's a lot of work, okay? All right, so if we take all of these calculations and we have our BMR, our TEF, our NEAT, and our EEE, and we add them all together, we get 2,150 calories. That's your caloric need for the day. Right? So if you're a 150-pound person, this is probably somewhere around where you would be. Right? Your BMR is 1,500. You need 2,150 calories throughout the day. I know there's some people in here going, holy shit. Right? That's a lot of calories. Right? It really isn't. You're just not used to eating those. Right? And that's when you get with someone like me or Trevor or Delana or anyone that's in that nutrition world, and we look at like, okay, you need to track 3 to 4 to 5 days. Some nutritionists, dietitians want you to track a week, right? Just to get a trend and see what kind of foods you're eating. And then we're gonna look at it and be like, okay, you need 2,150 calories. And then you come to me and you're like, I get 1,100, right? But your BMR is 1,500 and you're having all these issues, right? So now we're like, okay, now, if you've ever heard the term reverse dieting, right? This is where reverse dieting comes into play, all right? We need to find a way to get you from 1,100 calories to 2,100 calories or somewhere close to that, right? Over time, just like your workouts. When you start working out, let's say your goal is to back squat 200 pounds. Ladies, guys, 350 pounds, right? And then you come in and you do your back squat and 95 pounds feels heavy or 85 pounds feels heavy. You got a lot of work to do. Same thing here. If you're at 1,100 and you need to get to 2,100, you have a lot of work to do. That work is done over a progressive, periodized plan over time, all right? Some people it might take a couple months. Some people it might take a year to get there. Hopefully not, but it all depends on how dedicated they are to it. And one of the reasons it takes that long, if you do too much in too quick of a period, just like when you're lifting weights, you can overdo it, possibly get injured. Well, with nutrition, you can overdo it and you can mess up your gut biome, okay? Bloating, diarrhea, acid reflux, all of the poor bowel movements, all of those things are a part of that, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So going back to our macronutrients, just to kind of give you some context here before we start putting percentages together. Carbohydrates and proteins, 1 gram equals 4 calories. All right, so when you're calculating your stuff, you need to know that carbohydrates and proteins, very equal, right? They're broken down the same way in the body. One's broken down faster than the other, but they're both broken down into glycogen. Okay, and that's what your body uses for energy. Fats, on the other hand, 1 gram is 9 calories. It's very dense, very expensive, right? So you got to eat less of that. And then when you run your numbers, whatever your fat is, that's your essential fat that you need for the day. I don't know how you calculate it, Delana, but it's probably pretty close, right? So that 2,150 calories, like I said before, I start everyone off with 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fats. That's pretty standard, all right? Carbs at 40%, that's 860 divided by 4, gives you 215 grams of carbs. For some of you, that sounds really high because you've been told that you need to eat less carbs, right? For others of you, like, damn, that's low. That's all I eat, carbs and fats, right? Proteins. If you're at that 2,150, you need 161 grams of protein. And I know a lot of you at that 150 range, that BMR 150, are like, there ain't no way. Yeah, there's a way. It just takes time. Okay? And then your fats, only 71.67. Now there's usually, I don't know what some of the nutritionists do, but from listening to the people that I respect and my own experiences, there's about a 10% variance there. You don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to be exact, right? So on this, let's say if you have 75 grams of fats, it's not the end of the world. Even 77, it looks like you're way over. It's not the end of the world, right? But you don't want to have it consistently over all the time, because over time, then it can have an effect, right? And if you're an individual design client of mine or a personal training client of mine, I preach this quite a bit, right? Your healthy lifestyle choices are much greater your success than your macronutrient breakdown. Macros are important. They're important to know how many calories you need. They're important to know how much protein you need to take in. But it's not the end all to be all, because if the lifestyle choices are out of whack, it doesn't matter how good your nutrition is. 3 nights of bad night's sleep will throw all that shit out the window. Okay? 3 nights of bad night's sleep, all your nutrition and everything, doesn't mean it's gone to waste. It just means you're not optimizing it. Okay? So that's why healthy lifestyle choices, we're going to go over some of those, is much greater than how many macros you get. And the biggest thing with that is, if you eat the protein that you're supposed to eat, there's a good chance you're going to have a deficit anyways. Okay? Especially if you're not used to eating a lot of protein. All right? What do we mean by that? Okay, well, your daily choices affect your outcome more than actual amount. It's period, right? That's what I just went through. So when I was talking about basic lifestyle guidelines, I call these BLGs from the company, or my certification company that I go through, which is OPEX Fitness, by the way. One is apply work and rest appropriately. Don't work yourself to death, and if you do, make sure you recover yourself to death. Right? If you work a little, you don't need quite as much rest, but you still need the bare minimum, the basics. Right? So balance it out. It goes back to, if your body wants homeostasis, it doesn't want it just internally as well. It wants the external to be balanced as well, so it doesn't have to work as hard. So help yourself out a little bit so that you can meet those goals, those objectives that you have for optimal health, right? And I guess we talk about that quite a bit, right? We don't really talk about performance and stuff like that, because if you're optimally healthy, you're gonna perform well at your job, in fitness, at a sport, in life in general, because you're just gonna be that much sharper, right? So you need sun exposure. It's very important. Even today when it's cloudy, this is perfect, right? Even today when it's cloudy, if it's not raining, go outside. A 10-minute walk in the sun, you might have to walk 30 minutes when it's cloudy out, but you get the same effect. Okay? So even on a cloudy day, you're like, I was gonna go walk, but it was cloudy. Just go for a longer walk. You get the same, endorphin benefits, that kind of like happy feeling and just kind of like relaxation and stuff like that. You get the same effect. Maybe it's because you have to walk 3 times as far. I don't know. But no, I'm just kidding. But as you walk and you move, you need water, you want to move blood, and you need proper digestion. Okay? These are essential to your daily routine. They're also essential to what we were talking about before. All those macros that you look at and you're like, damn, that's a lot. It's a lot of protein, right? You need to drink enough water to move that stuff through your system. You need to move the blood. The only way to move the blood is to move your body, right? That will aid in proper digestion, which will also aid in nutrients being given out and handed out inside the body where they need to go, right? If you eat a big meal and you sit down and you watch a 3-hour movie, I mean, it's not gone to waste, but you might feel bloated afterwards. You might get up and be like, oh man, you know, and you didn't even eat that much. But those are the kind of things, like being aware of those types of things when you're eating. Drink water. Half your body weight in ounces is a good starting point. Starting point. Okay? So again, if you weigh 150 pounds, 75 ounces of water is the minimum amount you should be getting. Yep. Is the minimum. All right? If you're active, if you're like Erin, I'll use Erin for an example. If she's active all day, she probably needs 150 ounces just throughout the day. And then she'll probably need another 20, 40 ounces for her workout if it's a CrossFit workout.
I don't get that many feet, sorry. That's not. I don't even have.
Hey, let's not get into how school system and the healthcare system don't optimize health for their own people, okay? That's a whole other rabbit hole to go down. Stop worrying about things that are out of your control, that you can't control, right? Seriously, I mean, anxiety, stress, gone. If you can't control it, why are you worried about it? Only can control the controllables, right? You can control how much water you drink. You can control what you put in your mouth and eat. You can control your exercise, getting out and moving. You can control all of those things. Who gives a shit what so-and-so is doing outside of all of those variables? It doesn't matter. It's not you, right? So stop worrying. I put on who cares if Karen was kicked off The Bachelor, right? No one gives a shit. You can tell I don't watch The Bachelor because I don't even know if there's a fucking Karen on there. Excuse my language. But welcome to Octane Fitness at the same time. All right, recover. Recovery is just important as the work that you put in. I think we've said that already 4 or 5 times, right? Blood flow facilitates recovery and faster healing. So, move, right? If all you did was heavy back squats or deadlifts, go for a walk. Get on the bike. Don't be so damn stiff. Don't be so lazy, right? I'm guilty. I'll admit it. But man, that was a hard workout. I'm just gonna sit down. Right? I'm guilty of it myself. Consistent bed and wake times. Doesn't seem important, right? If you don't go to bed at the same time and you don't wake up at the same time, how do you balance it out? Start with one. The best one to start with, find a wake time that works for you. Every day. Even on the weekends. You ever hear people go, oh shit, it's Monday, man, I got worn out from Monday. You know what that is? It's jet lag from the weekend. Because you changed everything that you do during the week. You stay out later on Friday and Saturday night. You get up later Saturday and Sunday morning. And then all of a sudden Monday you got to get up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. You're like, oh my God. Right? It's jet lag. That's all it is. You did it to yourself. Control the controllables. Right? Circadian rhythm is a real thing.
Yes.
Whether you want to believe it or not. Right? You don't believe me? One day, don't do anything. Open your windows up. Sleep until the sun comes up. You're not sleeping much longer. Right? As soon as that light hits your eyes, you're going to be like, oh man. And then, notice about 5, 6 o'clock, depending on the time of year, 7 o'clock, 7:30. As soon as that sun goes down, you're like, oh man, I'm starting to get tired. It's natural. It's built in. You can't do anything about it. I mean, if you work the night shift, sorry, but I mean, that's just something you're gonna have to deal with. I mean, you can't change that. You can't just walk around with a red light all day and then black out your, I mean, you can if you don't look weird, but you know, just to get that stimulation. And it's very expensive. Digestion. I was talking to someone about this. I think I was talking to Delana about it as well. When you eat something, good or bad for you, good or bad for your gut, it's a 36 to 44 hour commitment once you swallow it. Okay, you still, it has to go through that. It doesn't take that long to digest necessarily, but that's how long it's going to affect how you feel, how you perform, how you sleep, all of it, right? There's no exact how long it is. I'm sure if it's highly processed and sugar laden, it's gonna last longer. You're gonna feel it much faster. If it's less processed, less sugar laden, it's maybe just fats and stuff like that, might not last quite as long, might not feel it right away, right? So there is no exact science on that. The best thing you can do is the big capitalized stuff that's there. Sit down, right? Sit down, turn off your phone, take away the distractions, you know, enjoy your food, chew your food, enjoy the company around you, kind of eat in a relaxed state. If you're one of those people, Aaron, I know you don't have any, I'm not picking on Aaron, but Aaron is like really like it's the typical American worker, right? On the go, eating on the go, sitting on my computer, eating with a phone attached to your ear while you're trying to scroll on TikTok and find a new dance, right? That's not the best time to eat. You're in fight or flight. Fight or flight. You're overstimulated, you can't digest the food. And then by the time you can digest the food, it's already started to bloat you, bad digestion, and stuff like that, right? So, super, super important. And I just threw this in just in case you don't know, benefits of chewing your food, right? Absorb more nutrients, all right? If you absorb more nutrients, you'll get more energy from your food. For example, if you eat 30 grams of protein or 40 grams of protein at your meal, and you don't do 30, 40 chews, you're probably not going to get 30 to 40 grams of protein out of your food, right? If you are one of those where you put it in your mouth, you're like chomp, chomp, wash it down with water, think about a garden hose and then throwing some marbles in there. What happens? It creates gaps. That's what happens in your digestive system. It's a very easy way to get acid reflux and bloating, right? So making sure you chew your food. The other thing it does, it burns more calories. Not a ton more, but it burns more calories. It can help maintain a healthy weight. Makes it easier to digest. It's good for your teeth. Gives your teeth something to chew on and do, right? Reduces bacteria buildup in your intestines. Again, there's no gapping in there and it's broken down mostly already into like a paste, then now it can just break it down the rest of the way and then put the energy where it needs to and expend the rest of it, right? Enjoy the taste, right? Prioritizing your protein, right? So I'm not gonna read through this, but I'll let you kind of look at it. But why we talk about prioritizing our protein is what I said earlier. If you eat the protein that you put on your plate, there's a good chance you're going to undereat everything else. Right? Some of my personal training clients and individual design clients have found this out. Right? Oh my God, I can't eat any more protein. I can't. Right? What else are you eating? I'm eating protein. Can't eat anything else. Right? So protein, again, eat protein first, right there, before you eat anything else. So I have a client right now, and everyone, most people know her, Maritza. She goes out, eats at Mexican restaurants quite a bit. I said, fine, have your chips, salsa, and guacamole. I'm not gonna tell you not to eat anything, right? But sit down, have a conversation first. Talk with everyone. Talk about whatever you want to. Order your food, have it delivered, eat your protein, eat your vegetables, Then, if you want chips, salsa, and guacamole, go ahead and eat them, right? It's been a month now. She hasn't had chips, salsa, and guacamole anytime she's done that. Chips, salsa, and guacamole cuts out 750 calories easy of your eating, okay? So it's an easy way to control what you put in your system, right? Why? It's the essential thing for muscle growth and recovery and retention. Ensures getting the appropriate amount per day. Goes back to if you eat beans, plantains, rice, all that stuff first, and then you're trying to shovel all the protein in afterwards, you're not going to get your protein. Okay? Keeps you feeling satiated longer, and it keeps the cravings at bay so you don't overeat. Okay? Whoops. These are the big things that you can take from it. Builds muscle, increases your metabolism, keeps you from overthinking the process. What I mean by that is, anyone who's ever heard is, if you have to get 160 grams of protein, I tell people, don't worry about all the other stuff. Get all your protein. If you're 500 calories short, okay. Guarantee you're not hungry, right? The fats will work themselves out. If you're eating meat protein, the fats will work themselves out, right? Only eat carbs if you're still hungry, not because you're bored or that's what you always do, right? I used to tell people all the time, it's like, I'm not gonna pick on you, David, but you said this the other day. I gotta have my whatever. As soon as you take ownership of food, it's a losing battle. It's not yours. It's yours when you eat it, and then it's gone. It's no longer yours. So whatever you're going to eat, just make sure it's going to serve you. It's going to provide a purpose for you, right? I get it. Everyone in here that's a member here knows that I love chocolate chip cookies, right? And if you give me chocolate chip cookies, and there's a dozen of them, I'm eating a dozen. They're gone in a day. Can't control myself, which is why I don't eat them. Thanks, Trevor, for birthday every year for getting me a dozen cookies, and I eat them in one day. Eat your veggies. Important vitamins and antioxidants. Lots of fiber, right? But they prevent disease, helps manage your weight, keeps you satiated, aids in decreased calories, increases the chance of weight loss. All right? Not all veggies are good. Stick to bright color as they're higher in nutrients. So, sweet potatoes, grains, things like that. It's fine to have them as long as it doesn't affect your gut, and it should not be the first thing you go to for your carbohydrates, right? So you want to put those vegetables in there. Enjoy your carbs at the appropriate time. After you eat your protein, get your vegetables in. These are the carbs that you should be reaching for. Fruit, vegetables, sweet potatoes, beans, if you don't know what legumes are, right? Oats, quinoa, whole wheat breads, and pasta. Yeah, I didn't leave it out. I know people like bread. I know people like pasta. It should be the last thing, though, right? Spaghetti and meatballs. Eat your meatballs and then have some pasta, right? Accept that you need to make a change. If you can't do that, you won't succeed. You'll always be fighting yourself. Okay? Be mindful. Whoops. I know this is running longer than we wanted it to, but I think this stuff is important. Be mindful of your choices. I talked to Delana about this at extent on the phone. Being mindful and awareness of what you're putting into your mouth. And the one question that you should ask yourself is, does it serve your purpose? Is it going to get you to where you're going to perform optimally at whatever it is that you're trying to do? Weight loss, strength gains, performance, whatever. Okay? Your choices are your behaviors. Poor choices, poor behaviors. All right? I'm going to kind of go through this real quick. Not making a choice is still a choice. All right? Whether it's positive or negative, that's the action that you chose, so make better choices. And why? Well, your choices and behaviors are your habits, right? Positive or negative, they're your habits. Habits are hard to break. Okay? Everyone in here has bad habits. Whether it's chewing your nails or whatever. Everyone has bad habits. And if you've tried to break it, you know how hard it is to break that habit, right? So you have to be acceptance of it. You have to understand that you need to make a change, and you got to work at it mentally to make a change, not physically. It's all here, okay? I think the big word there is acceptance. We talked about acceptance a lot when I talked to Delina on the phone, right? And then again, at the very bottom, does it serve me? Does it serve my objective, goals, purpose, etc.? Right? So that's kind of the end of the presentation. There are some things in here that, some of your questions that people had. Difference, what's better, plant-based or whey? Whatever doesn't mess with your gut. Right? Whey protein tends to be harder on some people's stomachs. I use mostly plant-based stuff. If you're eating whole foods and you're hitting your protein goals and you need a supplementation to get some protein, I recommend plant-based just because it's easier on your gut. If you are like a meat eater and stuff like that, there are bone broth, powdered bone broth proteins out there like Paleo Valleys that are amazing, that are really easy on your gut. All right? Best way to lose weight, build muscle and move more. That's it. Build muscle and lose more. We talked about how to build muscle, talked about moving more. If you need more in depth on that, we can go into it. Eating before workouts was a big question. Should I or shouldn't I eat before workouts? It's up to you. I don't eat before workouts. Trevor? It depends. If you come in and you work out and you don't feel optimal, then try eating, right? My suggestion, eating before workouts, is make sure you eat far enough advance of the workout and then eat carbs, like some berries, some fruit, something like that, maybe a smoothie. But if you load it up with proteins and fats and stuff like that, you're gonna feel a little bit slow and lethargic, right? Again, protein before workouts, just covered that. If you have protein and it's a substantial amount of protein, you're probably gonna feel like it sits a little heavy in your gut, even if it's protein powder. Okay? Is there a minimum and maximum amount of protein? Yeah, the minimum is your baseline. And your maximum is how much your gut can take. That's it, right? If your minimum is, let's say you are 125 pounds, we'll use someone a little bit smaller. Very easily, you should get 125 grams of protein. And then if you fall 10% short of that, you're good, right? If you're trying to build muscle, you might need to go 140 grams of protein. Maybe your gut doesn't like 140 grams of protein. Cut it back 10, see how you feel. Still don't like it, cut it back 5 more. If you're back at 125, I guess 125 is your spot, right? It's just being cognitive of it, right? Intermittent fasting is a big one. Sure. The only thing I'm gonna say about intermittent fasting is, if you intermittent fast for 10, 12, 16, 18, 24, 36 hours, there's nothing wrong with that. There are health benefits to fasting for 72 hours and more. But why are you doing it? Number one, don't do it for fat loss. Don't do it for weight loss. Most people do it for spiritual reasons. Most people do it for spiritual reasons, all right? The other thing with intermittent fasting is, if you do have extended fasts like that, make sure that the food that you eat when you break that fast is protein and fats. Because if you eat anything that's carb laden, the rest of your day is going to be a roller coaster of cravings. Okay? You want something that's going to keep you satiated and serve you. Supplements, essential or not? They're not essential. If you eat whole foods and you're hitting your protein goals, they're not essential. Unless you have a deficiency somewhere. Okay? If I was that, someone asked me the other day is, if you were to pick a supplement for every day, what would it be? I would have to say creatine and probably something like a probiotic. Right? As outside of that, I'm not really sure what the benefits are minimal, unless you're trying to fill in protein gaps. And I'm sure Delana may agree or not agree on that. It's kind of like here nor there, right? But I will tell you this, creatine is the most studied supplement on the market, and creatine monohydrate has been studied more than anything on the market. It's very safe for most people. You go back to your inherited things and chronic diseases and stuff like that, you want to make sure that if you're taking it, that it flows into your health on that. Okay? Meal plans and prep. If you don't like cooking, you need to figure out a meal plan. Up Fresh Meals, 212, Good Kitchen. There's a ton of them out there locally. There's a ton of frozen ones as well. Meal prep, get with someone like Delana, right? Or someone that meal preps already, right? And they can help construct your meals. And that's it, right? I know that was long. I feel like a lot of people I saw a lot of I was wondering if it went this long, if I was gonna see but I saw a lot of interested eyes. So hopefully it was good information for you. And I do want to open it up. I know everyone wants to get out. It's not a nice day. I don't know why you want to go anywhere. But questions. I mean, I think we answered a lot of questions. But if there are any questions for me or even Delana, or Trevor, or anything that we covered today. But before we leave, I'm going to put Jason on the spot. So Jason, raise your hand over there. Jason is going to be hopefully one of our new, full-time coaches. He's going to be working with our athletes, him and a guy Israel that's not here. So that's what he looks like. He comes from New Hampshire. He played D2 basketball. He's mentored under some great strength and conditioning coaches for sports and athletics. He himself is a strength and conditioning coach and personal trainer. He's going to be an awesome addition. Hopefully I can talk him into doing some group sessions. So, but questions? Anyone have a question? Yeah.
You kept saying whole foods. What are whole foods? What do you do?
Whole foods? If it has, okay, so pineapple is technically 2 words. But if it has an ingredient list, it's not a whole food. Apples, meat, like steak is steak. Chicken's chicken. Apple's apple. Those are whole foods. Bok choy, it's vegetable. It's in its original form. I will say this: if you have a digestive issue, you want to cook your vegetables. Eating raw vegetables is probably one of the hardest things on your stomach. I don't know if anyone knows this, but raw vegetables has its own defense mechanism. It's fiber and being very fibrous and hard to break down. So if you eat it in its raw state and then you get upset stomach afterwards, yeah, you need to cook it. Okay? Does that answer your question? Okay. Anyone else? You look like you want to answer.
Well, I do. The protein issue, like to eat your proteins first. Is it bad if you don't eat food to do your proteins by just like protein powders?
Is it bad? No. It's preferred to get most of your protein. If not, I would say 80%, 75 to 80% of your protein should come from food. And if it's hard for you to do that, then you just need to plan it out. Yeah.
I've been messing with my macros, but the more protein I eat, the higher the fat.
Yeah.
The leaner cuts
Yeah, you can do, it all depends on what your macros look like. But yeah, I mean, pick leaner cuts of meat, especially if you like steak or if you're eating pork and stuff like that. Those are gonna be higher in fats. But yeah, leaner cuts of meat.
Every time I hit my protein, I'm way over.
So like, well, give me an example of like your protein and your fats.
Okay.
Like,
Um,
what's your protein goal?
155.
Okay.
And,
And then what does your fat usually end up?
It's supposed to be, I believe, at 71, and it's usually like at 90.
Yeah, I would just, so with someone like you, I'd say track your food for a couple days or write down your proteins that you're eating, and then you can look and see if there's better cuts of meat or something that's lower in fat on that, or maybe I have had people say that they add olive oil to stuff or they cook it in oil and stuff like that. Try not to. That's going to take out a lot of it. If you cook your steak with margarine or you cook anything with olive oil, that's going to add 12. Exactly. And what else are you?
They may be healthy, most of them are grass fed or this or that, but.
Yeah, well, here's
supposed to be
here's the thing, and this is something I didn't cover because this gets into a really deep hole. Is some people do really well on higher fat diets, and some people do really well on high carbohydrate diets, but there has to be a balance. Yeah, there has to be a balance. What I would say is if you normally have high fat and like I would say moderate protein or high protein, moderate fat, then I would have your carbs lower.
Well, that
Right.
happens pretty much.
Yeah. But if you're looking to like recomposition your body and stuff, then you'll want to take some of that fat out and possibly increase your carbs and kind of like adjust them a little bit. So you'll have more energy and see how that affects it. And it's just one of those things where it's like, it takes about 7 to 10 days. Once you make that transition, you'll see a little bit of weight gain because your body's reacting to it. It's not used to it. And then you'll start to see you'll see it either start to change and come off, or if it stays up there for longer than 10 to 14 days, then you probably have to make another adjustment, right? It's one of those things where it's very individualized. Yeah.
What are your thoughts or feelings about Whole30?
We just talked about this on the. I don't really, and Trevor laughs at me sometimes. I'm like, I don't really care what you call it. Mediterranean, Whole30, Paleo, Keto, even, right? If you look at all of them, there's one thing they have in common, and we laughed about it on the phone the other day, is they're all whole foods.
Yeah.
They're just, it's the exact same, it's like Mexican food. It's the same ingredients, it's just switched around, right? So it kind of goes back to her question, her question is, like, is that bad? No, absolutely not. But if her protein's high and her fat is somewhat high, then her carbs need to be low. And if it's not getting her results, then she needs to reduce her fats and bring her carbs up, right?
I think it just gave me, I did it only once recently, and it just gave me a lot of information about my body.
Oh, absolutely.
So I learned a lot from it, and it's changed.
Whole30 is
Yeah.
Whole30
It's
is
really more of a
considered
learning thing.
a bit of an elimination diet,
Yeah, exactly.
right? So you do that for 30 days. It's very limiting.
Yeah.
So it is an elimination diet. And anyone who does Whole30, because I've done Whole30 as well a couple times, and every time that I reintroduce something that I had in my diet, I realized immediately that's one of the things that was affecting my gut or my sleep or whatever, right? So it's not a bad thing to do. It's just that it usually does take about 30 days. As people talk about cleanses, right? That's one of the best kind of cleanses, is to cleanse your body of the inflammation and stuff like that by eating whole foods that don't have inflammatories to them. And then you reintroduce them, and then you find out whether or not you have a reaction to them. And usually, like, the big ones are dairy and gluten and stuff like that. But then you'll also notice, like, you might have a certain fruit or something and you're like, man, that just tore my stomach up. You know what I mean? But she's like, oh yeah. Damn strawberries. But yeah, I mean, I don't like, if you're doing it with a purpose, go back to, is it going to serve you, and is it purposeful? and you're not just doing a trend, right? Then it's great. But like I always go back to, they all have the same thing. They all have whole foods. Not one of those diets has a protein shake. Not one of those diets has crackers. Not one of those diets has goldfish. Not one of those diets has, no, I'm picking on Corey because she brought it up yesterday. But yeah, any other questions? No. Good question, awesome question. Yeah.
Dairy, cheese, more of those.
Again, it goes back to how does it affect your body? How does it affect your performance? I mean, dairy is a pretty easy one to know. If you eat it within 30 minutes, if you start to get congested or you get like saliva buildup or kind of bloating or cramping of the stomach, that's a number one sign, red flag right there that you shouldn't be eating or ingesting. Right? And gluten's kind of the same thing. Gluten, like if you have something that has gluten in it and you eat it, within 30 minutes, if you don't feel bloating, you're probably good. But if you overeat gluten, it's hard to tell because you just ate what we like call being an asshole, which is what I do sometimes. Then you don't know because you just overate.
Yeah.
If you feel like crap, it's not necessarily the gluten or the dairy pizza.
You just ate like crap.
You just ate like crap, right? Yeah.
So with
Yep.
women, and it's not necessarily bad.
What's that? No, I mean dairy is a great source of fats, a great source of or can be a good source of protein. It just really is all about how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the
Sorry.
balancing of the hormones with the eating is why I see Delana with trying to get those things. So intermittent fasting for one can mess with your hormones as
Absolutely.
women. So trying to balance those with the working out and trying to achieve those things physically.
Yeah, that was one.
So I think that.
And that right there is one of the things I just listened to on a podcast on Huberman. Huh?
I don't know
Oh,
whether
sorry.
It's a question as much as
It's
a
it how
statement. Of
no, it
how-
is. It would be a question. The question would be the question that what in Huberman Lab was, how does intermittent fasting affect men in comparison to women or women in comparison to men? And it does. It has a huge effect on, a way bigger effect on women and their hormones than it does with men. Like a big difference. And if you already have like thyroid issues or hormone issues and stuff like that, it's a definite no-no. Yeah, it's a definite no. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Andy Galpin was on Huberman Lab. He was super in-depth in that stuff. Like if you want to geek out on that, if you're really interested in it, Andrew, like Huberman Lab and Dr. Andy Galpin, they get 3 hours deep in that crap. And they just did a 6-part series of 24 hours of podcasting. With some really good stuff on that. Anyone else? I know Corey.
I know you said we shouldn't.
Oh my God, I can't have any
to snack.
goldfish.
Speaking of snack, so what do you grab during the day if you're starving and you need something quick, like a protein
Okay,
shake?
the first thing I'm going to say is